Hey there, it's another beautiful day. Let's watch some stuff.
So Biden White House is discussing preemptive pardons for those in Trump's crosshairs. Let's be specific about exactly who we're talking about, okay? Talking about Fauci. So Biden is considering a preemptive pardon on Anthony Fauci right now. I'm going to tell you that right now. We're going to look through this article. Okay, when Biden pardoned his son and essentially pardoned himself, but to pardon Fauci is beyond the pale. Okay, like, what are you pardoning him for? Like, what's the pardon for? I thought he's the hero of the United States. Why would you need to pardon him? He hasn't been indicted for anything. He hasn't been implicated in anything. It's not like this guy committed a global crime, the likes of which we've never seen in human history. You know, assuming that maybe he did do that. It's not like we have a new head of the Department of Health who has been targeting this guy for 40 years. It's not like that guy wrote a book specifically about all of his crimes.
The presidential pardon is a very valuable tool to any president that's leaving office. And they've all done it, right? At the end of their term, they pardon whoever they want for whyever they want. But what is interesting is how the media behaves about it.
The pardon was originally meant to grant the president the power to temper justice with mercy. It was not enshrined in our Constitution so that a dishonorable man could reward his criminal allies, friends, and family for their corrupt practices. I don't have a problem with Biden pardoning his son. He should have pardoned him. The crazies are coming, right? But to me, it's like pardon more.
Same person, 4 years apart. The first one was in 2020 when Trump was ending his first presidency, and she was all up in arms about who is he going to pardon. And now Biden's president, and it's okay to be like, pardon everybody.
It was all bull.
Pretty much. A lot of stuff has happened in the last couple days, so let's get into it. But before we do, would you hit that like button for me? It'll really help out the channel. And if you haven't already, won't you consider subscribing? And then come on back. I'm making a new episode every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
So by now, it's not exactly breaking news that Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, was basically assassinated, and the memes coming out of this, beautiful. But one thing I have seen pop up is people saying that this isn't funny to joke about, because at the end of the day, he was a person with a family. And I'm here to tell you that this man was an evil, greedy demon monster, and quite possibly the devil. Let's talk about why. So for starters, there's been tons of reports from people who work at United Healthcare that across the board, copays went up, across the board, benefits went down, and every Medicare Advantage plan had a deductible added to it. These things are all obviously to increase the profits of the company he was running. But doggo, why are profits bad? Here is the revenue for the last 4 quarters for United Healthcare. I want you to look at the word next to those numbers. It's billion. The last 4 financial quarters in a row, United Healthcare made over $70 billion in revenue. Billion with a B. Oh, and by the way, the numbers get even worse when you factor in Optum, which is United Healthcare's mail-order pharmacy system, which boasted about another $230 billion in revenue. And there's been tons of reports from people who work at United Healthcare who said that old Brian Boy loved to brag about how profitable the last year was, and then still all the benefits for everyone. On top of that, something else that old Brian Boy implemented, the use of an AI model with a 90% error rate that denies care. And he's just cool with that. It would literally override determinations that were made by the patient's doctors. On top of all that, something else that United Healthcare loves to do is just lie to their customers. You see, United Healthcare receives a government subsidy to offer Medicare, and if any amount of that government funding gets slashed, they use that as an excuse to tell their customers why their benefits got worse, despite boasting over $790 billion in revenue. Oh, by the way, Brian's total compensation by December 31st would have been $25 million. That's a base salary of $1.5 million, with almost $24 million in other benefits, the bulk being in stock options. So had he made it to the end of the year, he would have taken home $25 million in value, while cutting benefits for old people and blaming the government. Yeah, no, this guy sucked. Thoughts and copays, my dude. Rest in piss.
So as you may very well know, this guy, the CEO of United Healthcare, had his bucket kicked for him the other day. There's a lot of mixed emotions going on in the internet. Part of them are, feeling bad because at the end of the day, he is still a human being and he is no longer with us. Family lost him. Then there's the other side of the emotions that fall right in line with how I feel about the American healthcare system. And some of them Some of them are gold. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I'm not in favor of glorifying or championing the kicking of another person's bucket. I think it's wrong, and I don't think that's the way to solve any problems. But we're going to get into it just a little bit.
So how freaked out do you think the billionaire class is that this is the second time that one of them has publicly become unalive due to something, and the entire working class population is not only not sad about it, but I would say that there's a very good case where most people think it's justified, especially when you see the shell casings that said defend or deny, defend, depose, which is the healthcare's entire plan. If you have a huge bill, they're going to deny your healthcare, your claim. Then they're going to defend against your claim in court when they know you can't afford the lawyers to go up against them. Then they're going to depose your claim so they don't have to fucking pay it ever. And the fact that he put those three words on the shell casing just kind of proves what his motive was. And most people I've talked to sounds like they think it's justified, which is going to make them have a hell of a time finding a jury, assuming they ever catch this guy, which, as it's looking now, they may never catch this guy, which is definitely going to encourage copycats. So,
by comparison, this last clip was very tame when you look at all of the other wonderful things that people on the internet have to say about this CEO, being removed from society. But deny, defend, and depose were written on the shell casings left at the scene. Obviously, there was some kind of conflict going between this person and his healthcare. And those words are spreading far and wide.
The guy who unalived the United Healthcare CEO wrote on the bullets, deny, defend, depose. People want to know what that means, and it means something very specific within a legal context because it refers to strategies that insurance industry players will use to essentially avoid accountability. But because they were written on bullets, it actually sends a message, a very clear message, and it starts to sound like a revolutionary battle cry. Now, I am not a lawyer. I am doing this for entertainment purposes only. I'm an internet idiot. Don't take advice from me. So within a legal context, deny is to deny claims or allegations. To defend is to defend against claims, often through legal means. And to depose is to obtain testimony, sworn testimony, typically in pretrial discovery. I don't necessarily support the unaliving of people, okay, so don't get me wrong, but what that person did was an act of rebellion. And that's why a lot of people are seeing these words deny, defend, depose, and they're like, it sounds like a slogan. It sounds like a war cry or something. And it is. It is. Here's the double meaning of that. To deny is to deny the corrupt authorities and institutions in this country. To defend is to defend against them, to defend our communities, our rights, our freedoms. And to depose is to dismantle these corrupt systems and replace them with something equitable. What's also really interesting about this, just looking at the events of the past 24 hours, if you're on UFO Talk at all, you know that there was all of this talk about how there was going to be a great battle in the sky between fighter jets and UFOs on December 3rd for reasons we won't get into outside the scope of this video. But that didn't happen. What did happen is the French government collapsed because people are fed up. And South Korea tried to impose martial law and people revolted. So it lasted for 3 hours. This has all happened within the past 24, 48 hours. And there's something a brewing in the world right now. And it is collective and it is big. And 2025 is going to be a ride. So buckle up.
First of all, I didn't know that she was going to talk about the alien thing that never happened, but it is interesting that there were still substantial events that happened in that time frame. But getting back to the CEO event, healthcare in the United States is an absolute joke. It's a few people in the top that all they care about is money. And that's what it is. It's government wanting your money. How can they get your money and keep you sick and then deny you the services that you need to be unsick after they made you sick? Speaking of sick, these investors who are supposed to be interested in the health of the American people, this is how sick they are.
They stepped over his body and started the meeting on time. He was in Manhattan at 7 a.m. for an 8 a.m. investor meeting. He got in front of the main doors to the building of the investor. They could have had this on Zoom. Instead, they had to be there in person. Why they had to be there in person? Because we need to make sure commercial real estate is flourishing. He got by an assassin with a silencer while he wore a jacket thinking about PowerPoint presentations on how he is returning value to shareholders by denying health care to moms with breast cancer. And he got caught in the street, and they stepped over his body. Those investors that he was working for, the shareholders that he held dear as a CEO, they stepped over his pool of blood. They kicked the shell casings that led to the end of his life down the street because the meeting still had to start on time. These companies don't give a fuck on nobody. He's the CEO, the chief executive officer of a healthcare company. They didn't even check to see if he still had a pulse. They just wanted to check the stock price, which, mind you, went up 2.5% when they found out his ass was dead. Do less at work.
Now, full disclosure, I don't know if the meeting actually carried on, and I don't know if they literally stepped over this scene where that happens to get into this, but it does pretty much give us an image of what we think about the healthcare system here in the United States. They don't care about lives. They care about the money. So it wouldn't surprise me if they actually did carry on with their investor meeting and how they could make more money off of the people while denying services and raising prices of premiums. Like I said, I don't know for certain that's exactly what happened, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Powerful earthquakes shake Northern California, triggering a tsunami warning all the way down to Santa Cruz.
Watch the waves from the magnitude 7 earthquake offshore Cape Mendocino, California, cross over seismic stations in North America. Each one of these dots is a seismic station. When the ground below the station moves up, the dot turns red, and when the ground below the station moves down, the dot turns blue. By the time the earthquake waves get away from where the earthquake occurred, they're far too small to feel, but not too small to be measured by these sensitive seismometers. By the time the waves reach the East Coast, they're moving the ground smaller than the width of a human hair.
Yeah, that happened yesterday here in California, but it's in Northern California, nowhere near me. I didn't even feel it here. But that is along that fault line that we see in those doomsday maps. Yeah, those, which, show part of California just kind of sinking into the ocean.
There was a scientist from Mexico who was on the threshold of producing real results of telepathy and also changing the way we viewed the fundamentals of reality and consciousness. This was all before he mysteriously disappeared in 1994, before his biggest experiment yet. This scientist was Jacobo Grinberg. Jacobo believed that reality is a simulation projected by a collective consciousness. Each individual taps into the game of this reality and accepts its rules, perceiving the normality of it through the stimuli of the mind. A more harrowing revelation from his synergic theory is that each person is a conduit for the hyperfield, and therefore could be used to infect or infiltrate it with a desired reality. If the collective reality exists because we are all conforming to its space-time rules, then anyone who has an invested and profitable share of the entirety of it needs the mass to conform in order for the mundane reality to be sustained. If groups of people were to awaken and shift their paradigm, then the rulers of the reality could simply affect the masses as individual conduits to reinstate the status quo.
A lot of people are waking up to this reality, and it's time for a paradigm shift. Now. Sorry. Just a shout out to my friend over on Rumble, Paradigm Shift Now. He's a big proponent of the win-win paradigm, because right now what we're stuck in is a win-lose paradigm, because all these people at the top are so focused on their money and they have to win, which means everybody else has to lose. But there is a possibility for the win-win, and unfortunately a lot of the people who speak out in favor of this, they just disappear.
Someone needs to tell Blue Cross Blue Shield to watch the news, because this is outrageous. They want you to either pay up or just raw dog the rest of the surgery. They say if you go too long on your surgery, you just gotta pay it yourself or stop having anesthesia. Imagine waking up halfway through a surgery and they're like, yeah, we wanted to keep you out for the whole thing, but the insurance company was like, no, corporate profits, Shareholders, no!
So by now, I'm sure you know my position on the FDA and the American healthcare system and Big Pharma, but this was news to me. Apparently this happened a few weeks ago.
So there's an article circulating around the internet right now in relation to anesthesia, and I'm an anesthesiologist, so I picked up on it. And it's that an insurance company, Blue Cross, does not want to reimburse anesthesiologists in New York, Missouri, or Connecticut if a surgical procedure goes outside an arbitrary length of time. Which is ridiculous because 95% of what influences how long a surgery takes has nothing to do with the anesthesiologist and everything to do with the surgeon. It takes maybe 10-15 minutes to get a patient into the operating room and under anesthesia, and what happens after that depends on what the surgeon is doing. So with this insurance company for heart surgery, for example, they're going to say, well, we're going to pay the anesthesiologist 3 hours of time. And anything after that, we're just not going to pay them. Except if there's a complication during cardiac surgery and the cardiac surgeon needs 6 hours to repair any damage, or they get into the chest and it's just a lot more complicated, that cardiac surgeon can charge more money for whatever they're doing, but the anesthesiologist stopped getting paid after 3 hours. It's insane. It's greed personified. $1 billion company is trying to cut corners against a physician group that has no control over how long a surgery takes. And there are going to be consequences because now physicians in those regions of the country, they're going to probably want to leave. Who's going to want to work and not get paid? And then people aren't going to be able to find good surgeons because they're not going to have any anesthesiologists. It's just this self-fulfilling prophecy. It's terrible. Be better, Blue Cross.
Now that's a different perspective from what I was getting from the masses. The masses were saying that after this certain point, it is no longer covered. So the anesthesiologist would still get paid because they're going to bill the people for this arbitrary amount of time that they've decided the surgery should last. And beyond that point, you're going to get an extra bill for anesthesia. But either way, here's the amazing thing. Social media blew up about this entire situation, and apparently somebody was listening. Because just yesterday, this is what happened.
Violence is never the answer. Actually, turns out sometimes it is.
Breaking, Anthem has just been forced to reverse its diabolical policy to put a time limit on anesthesia following a widespread backlash on social media. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield said that it is backpedaling from the policy because of significant widespread misinformation, claiming that they would never not pay for medically necessary anesthesia. I'm calling BS. Stop gaslighting. Companies do not stop good and fair policies because of misinformation. They simply better educate people. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, you stopped because you got caught red-handed. In mid-November, the American Society for Anesthesiologists literally called on them to reverse their policy immediately. Is Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield trying to claim that physicians were falling victim to misinformation? The timing of their announcement is also no coincidence, as it comes right after the United Healthcare CEO was unalived. Either way, Anthem's policy reversal shows the true power of social media and speaking out about terrible corporate policies. If enough people make enough noise, they just might be able to get them reversed. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, for this shameful anesthesiology policy, you've just made the D3 List, a podcast about dumb, desperate, and diabolical business decisions.
Well, I am glad that the voices of the American people were heard in this particular situation, and a lot of people had a lot of not nice things to say because this was a crap situation. It really was. It's just the American healthcare system trying to get more money out of people. And it's terrible, and it needs to change, and that's why the American people have spoken up and chosen Donald Trump as our president. As he's saying, he can fix all of these things, which would be fantastic, because here in America, we are required to purchase a health care plan to the tune of $300 to $400 per person per month. And that is for a subpar plan. That doesn't cover a lot of health issues. And then there's fees on top of that, which is insane. And not only that, but if Americans do not purchase a health care plan, at the end of the year when we file our taxes, we have to prove that we've paid for a health care plan. And if we didn't, we have to pay the government, which is absolutely ridiculous. Something's got to change.
History repeats itself in 80-year blocks called saeculum, but we'll just call them history blocks. Within these 80-year history blocks, we have 4 turnings of around 20 years each. We usually call them generations. This book calls them turnings. Turnings are sort of like seasons, like spring, summer, fall, winter. Throughout our history, we've had these 80-year blocks, and the 80-year blocks have been remarkably similar to each other. We're in one now. The first turning, the first season, is a high, an upbeat era. The second turning is an awakening, a passionate era. The third turning is an unraveling, a downcast era. And the fourth turning, well, sorry, but fourth turnings suck. The fourth turning is a crisis, an era of upheaval. We're in a fourth turning right now.
This 80-year cycle theory suggests that every 80 years, something catastrophic happens to the whole planet, all of the people in the planet. And if you'll remember, 80 years ago, there was a war going on. You know, the Second World War, it was pretty bad. Things got really bad. And right now, things are pretty bad. There's war happening. Everybody's yelling at everybody else, and the higher ups are just figuring out how they can get more money and keep pushing the masses down. And it's got to change. And I think that Donald Trump being elected in the office is the catalyst to that change. Yes, things are escalating right now, and they will get bad. I don't know how much worse they're going to get, but I do believe that he's going to bring about the change where that 80-year cycle will start over and everything will be better, because these higher ups, they don't need to be pushing everybody down in the name of money. There's better ways to do things for our country, and I feel like other countries are going to follow suit because the people are fed up with the crap.
We all think that there's one universe. How could there be more?
Yeah, well, that is the essential question to start with, because a long time ago, 2 years ago, the word universe meant just what you are saying. It meant everything, the totality, every star, every galaxy, the whole shebang. So, what sense could there possibly be in having more than one everything? Mm-hmm. And what we have found in research that actually dates back a number of decades, but most vigorously relatively recently, is that our mathematical investigations are suggesting that what we have thought to be everything may actually be a tiny part of a much grander cosmos. And that grander cosmos can contain other realms that seem to rightly be called universe, just as our realm has been called universe. Which means that you have many universes, multiple universes, which we call them multiverse.
The talk of parallel universes always makes me think of that burnt toast theory, where a person is making breakfast and burns the toast, which prompts them to make fresh toast. And that adds another 3 minutes into their schedule for the day. And later on, they find out that some catastrophic event happened where they would have been had they not burnt the toast, which would have altered their life forever or completely taken them out of the equation. Now, what if that parallel universe exists where that person never burnt the toast? It's mind-boggling to think about. It's really a lot.
Behold a new classic UFO video. This is far off the coast of Southern California last night, December 4th. A fleet of UAP in formation begin descending into the water. Remember, this is far off the coast. They are not flares and they are not drones. There was nothing reported of that type in the area, but police were dispatched and they were all over this, but they can't do anything. There was about 40 different angles of this that I got in my email box. This was the best one. This is very legit looking. They're here.
Okay. That looks kind of legit. I mean, I want it to be. I really do. Off the southern coast, which is where I am, and I've heard zero about this except for this one clip. Anybody else know anything about it?
Why have they not shot any of them down? So you're telling me that, according to your sources at the Ministry of Defense, that this is considered a national emergency in England right now?
So I have a variety of sources. All I can say is that I can only speak insofar as my opinion. But I have a very strong opinion that this does constitute a national emergency, correct? There have also been sightings as well at another RAF base, which is operated by the US Air Force, named RAF Fairford. That's in Gloucestershire, so that's more to the west of England, but a different geographic location. But yeah, this is a crazy situation we find ourselves in. One of the bases that's been most impacted is RAF Lakenheath. Interestingly, RAF Lakenheath has been prepared to receive nuclear weapons from the USA, and the rumor is that those may now be deployed at the base, which, if true, it makes the situation even more concerning.
I find it absolutely ridiculous that the United States government is not shooting these things down. Find out where they're coming from, especially when we have sensitive materials at these Air Force bases. I mean, if they're alien, freaking great. Take the technology. If they're not alien, we need to know who the heck is spying on our stuff. So I think that rule needs to be changed where they're like, yeah, freak it, shoot them down.
Y'all, if there is anything I have learned off TikTok today, it is this. We should all be asking ourselves, if I were to be pew-pewed tomorrow in the street, in the middle of broad daylight, have I lived my life in such a way that the entire country would give a collective, like, don't get me wrong, I also am going, but dang. Anyway, think about it, be good.
Like I said, a lot of reactions from the people all over the interwebs are not very positive when it comes to the passing of the CEO of United Healthcare. But a lot of people are also taking the time to look at themselves and think, am I doing a good job? Am I going to leave behind something positive? Or are people just going to go, take the time, be nice. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. Please come on back in a couple days. We're going to watch some new stuff. I'll say different things. And it's going to be fantastic. Until then, have a wonderful day.
You're learning so many important things, and I'm so proud of you.